This is a Fox News alert. Just hours ago, you could hear the sirens sounding in Jerusalem after Iran sends more than 100 drones toward the Jewish state.
Tehran's attack coming after Israel's sweeping strikes against the heart of Iran's nuclear program. Several top Iranian military leaders and nuclear scientists are believed to be dead. Israel says this is just the beginning of Operation Rising Lion, and Iran calling it a declaration of war.
Let's get right to Alex Hogan, live from Israel. Alex, what can you tell us this morning?
Hi, Lawrence, Ainsley, and Charlie. So we are getting more and more information in the minutes and hours after all of this began, with Israel saying that it targeted Iran's nuclear capabilities as well as high-ranking military officials. Now Iran's president issued a response saying that its retaliation will make Israel feel foolish for this attack. We also know that this coordinated operation was carried out after years of planning between the IDF and Mossad. Mossad released this footage earlier this morning in a rare disclosure of behind-the-scenes footage of the scenes of Operation Rising Lion. According to Israeli officials, there were 3 phases this morning. The mission included Mossad commando units smuggling vehicles of weapons into Iran, setting up a drone base in Iran, and then activating the drones this morning and using them to hit Iran's surface-to-air missiles. At the same time, the Israeli military deployed about 200 aircraft, mainly fighter jets, to target roughly 100 sites in Iran. And today, the Israeli military says it also destroyed dozens of radar installations.
In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time.
Early this morning, multiple explosions were heard at Iran's Natanz nuclear power facility. The International Atomic Energy Agency says that there has been no increase in radiation levels at that facility. The Director General of the IAEA held talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, according to his office, just hours ago. And today, Iranian state media say that 6 nuclear scientists were killed in these strikes, as well as these 3 military commanders in the Iran regime. We also just got word from Israel that the IDF killed another high-ranking commander and says that most of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps high command were killed while gathering in an underground headquarters. Iran's ministry issued the following statement saying, quote, "The aggressive actions of the Zionist regime against Iran could not have been carried out without coordination and with the approval of the United States. Thus, the U.S. government, as the main supporter of this regime, will be held responsible for the dangerous consequences of Israel's adventurism." U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated the following, quote, "We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region." It was 3 a.m. this morning local time when sirens blared across the country, waking up millions of people in Israel, telling them to get to shelters. The defense minister declared a special state of emergency after this elaborate strike in anticipation for the Iranian response. Israel says that Iran launched as many as 100 drones. We have seen that close to an end at this point in time because the IDF says it was able to strike those drones down using fighter jets, as well as Jordan able to intercept some of those drones in its airspace. As a result of that, there is a slight sigh of relief for Israelis who had been hunkering down close to their shelters for hours. Again, since 3 a.m. this morning, we are starting to see some people make their way out, walk around, and Israeli Home Command has told people that they can venture out a little bit further. That being said, the country and the region on high alert as we go into this weekend.
Yeah, we were told they were buying groceries and bottled water and stockpiling those just in case. Yeah. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Let's bring in Fox News senior strategic analyst, retired 4-star General Jack Keane. General, thanks so much for joining the program this morning. You know, the Israelis really had 3 prongs to this almost. They went after the brains of the operation. They went after the certain facility sites, but they also went out after some of the tools that the Iranians would use to respond to this attack, right, General?
Yeah, I mean, it's a comprehensive attack for sure. It's conducted by 200 fighters and a Mossad on the ground. And by the way, the Mossad effectiveness inside of Iran for a number of years is absolutely stunning. They don't talk about what they do, but they've actually hit nuclear sites themselves on the ground in the past. They're quite remarkable. They're probably not going to reveal much about what they're doing here. But the four targets thereafter are, one, air defense systems, and it appears a lot of the drones that the Mossad launched inside the country were targeting them. And obviously, the nuclear enterprise itself, they hit 7 nuclear sites in doing that, the principal one being the one that's been identified, Natanz, and they haven't identified the other ones. Ballistic missiles, and this is a very key point here. The ballistic missiles are the weapon that could damage Israel. These drones that Iran is flying, they're not a serious threat. It takes 8 hours to get a drone to Israel. There's plenty of time to intercept them. When they flew over 150 of them back in April, every single one of them was defeated. The real retaliation means of ballistic missiles. They've got 2,000 of them before the strike began. And believe me, the Israelis are very, very concerned about these ballistic missiles. And also, the other target is what you mentioned, is the leadership target itself.
General, what is exactly a ballistic missile?
It's a missile that can travel at Mach speed. It goes into space and comes down on a target with usually a very high degree of accuracy. And the Iranians fired these at Israel twice before. Once was back in April when it was part of that massive over 300 missile attack and drone attack. And 120 ballistic missiles were fired at Israel, only 4 penetrated their air defense system. However, the next attack that Iran made, they didn't launch drones, they didn't launch any rockets, they launched only ballistic missiles. Over 200 ballistic missiles were launched, and 40 of them penetrated the Arrow system and the U.S. THAAD. That is unacceptable, and they were fortunately only focused at Air Force bases in the desert and the Mossad headquarters. Only 1 person was killed, but this is why the Israelis are very concerned about these ballistic missiles. If they launched hundreds of these ballistic missiles at one time and focused on population centers, a different outcome could be. So one of the primary targets here has been taking down these ballistic missiles so they reduce the effectiveness of Iran's retaliation.
General Keane, has there been anything over the past 12 hours that has surprised you about Iran's reaction or lack of reaction? Yeah. Well, certainly they have always sort of waited after an attack to reassess, and it's usually a couple of days, and sometimes it's a couple of weeks. But throwing these drones out there is such a feeble attempt. I think they're just trying to demonstrate, mostly to their own people, that they're doing something about this. But everybody knows that that's easily to defeat. The main event will be the ballistic missiles and how many of those truly do remain. And I might say, I mean, why is Israel doing this now? I mean, it became obvious as a result of the negotiations that President Trump's team was conducting that the Ayatollah, through his negotiators, was not about to voluntarily dismantle his nuclear program. And I think, and I've said this from the outset, I believe in the Ayatollah's mind, he believes he would rather have the airstrike against him and recover some of that. In other words, survive to build again, rather than voluntarily dismantle the program that could be verified by independent inspectors. The second thing is, we all know, and the Prime Minister is saying so, Iran was accelerating their program while the negotiations are going on, their nuclear program. And the third thing, and this is important, they were attempting to recover their air defense systems that Israel was so successful in destroying back in October.
So, General, let's talk about this next step, because the president has made it very clear in his post this morning, he's still open to talk. Right. They can choose peace still, but it looks like the Iranians have already canceled the talks going forward. That was pretty much expected. But the president is still opening up the door while still telling them in that same post, I'm going to give Israel even more weapons. And I don't think you're ready for that.
Yeah, well, I do think you know, obviously the strength that we're displaying here in terms of, and it's going to be a successful impact upon the Iranian regime, gives negotiators a fair amount of leverage, not only dealing with the remnants of a nuclear enterprise, but Iran's malign behavior in the region. I mean, funding their proxies and state sponsorship of terrorism. So there's a lot still here to talk about, certainly. And I think the days unfold in front of us in terms of the Israelis and how long this is going to take. This is conditions-based, and what do I mean by that? They have to do bond damage assessments, which they're doing in some level of detail right now, and their intelligence is exquisite, to determine how much has been damaged in the targets they have assigned to themselves. And based on that and its success in the unfolding days ahead will determine how long this operation continues. And certainly they're talking to President Trump's team about what has taken place and providing feedback. And I would expect that we're providing some intelligence, some logistics support. But the other thing the United States can provide, and I believe we're committed to it, is if this ballistic missile attack comes as we're expecting it to come, then the United States can also assist in defending Israel with other nations in the region, much as has been done before, that was put together by the CENTCOM commander, Eric Carrillo. If you can remember how well that was done when those 300 fuselage of drones, rockets, and missiles came at Israel back in April. The Israeli provided the main defense, but also the multinational force on the United States was significant in enhancing that defense.
Do you expect that in hours, days, weeks?
It's hard to predict the Iranians, as I said. You know, they normally take some time before they respond, and sometimes as much as 2 weeks in the last year. So we'll see how much they were able to recover from this strike. And listen, this rocks their command and control. Not stated is, I'm confident the Israelis have gotten into their command and control and be able to gather and put together an intelligence and a re-attack plan based on what resources are left. So there's a recovery that's going on inside of Iran right now in terms of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Certainly they are going to retaliate. But I hope the Israelis stay at this, and they'll continue to focus on a nuclear enterprise, but they're also a prime focus will be the remaining ballistic missiles that they can get to so that the effectiveness of the retaliation will be reduced.
Yeah, so General, they are set. The Ayatollah says death to America is not just a slogan, it's a policy. They want to wipe Israel and America. They say this out loud off the face of the earth. So what does retaliation look like if we have taken out 7 of their nuclear sites, or Israel did? If the ballistic missiles, if all, I think you said 2,000 ballistic missiles were there before the strike, if all of those are gone?
Well, if they take their ballistic missiles out, they don't have much in terms of effectiveness. You know, their Air Force is 1970s vintage that we gave to the Shah. And the reality is they don't have any consequential Navy. It's patrol boats and frigates. Their land force is large, but it's poorly led, poorly trained, and poorly equipped. Their business has always been rockets and missiles and providing support to their proxies. Their proxies have better capability than they have themselves when you look at Iran comprehensively. Those who have always feared going to war with Iran is going to be a major event here. It has never been that. Iran does not have any military effectiveness to stand up against the United States and Israel in terms of an all-out war. I don't see that in the offing at all.
That's good news.
General Jack Keane, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you.
General.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.